Brady Quinn, Fox Sports College and NFL studio and game analyst. And he, of course, is on the Two Pros and a Cup of Joe radio show alongside LeVar Arrington and Jonas Knox. You can catch them on Fox Sports Radio weekdays, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, which leads right into our show. Brady joins us on the program. Good morning, Brady. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let me just say this. McLovin, I'll miss you. Sad to see you leave. But, you know, everyone's got to move on at some point, you know?
Well, you were cut. You know, you got so you know what the feeling is like when the team that you're with doesn't really want you around anymore.
Yeah. No, and you know, like I told you last week, you know, I had a nice little discussion with my realtor who was really upset about the whole situation with the landlord. But no, it's you know, sometimes it can be a blessing in disguise, you know.
When you get cut, do you get to grab your jersey and take your jersey?
No. And the worst part is there's like a sentence that's said, and then everyone knows what's going to happen next. It's usually, coach wants to see you, bring your playbook with you. And I learned that when I first signed and agreed to my rookie deal with the Browns. And I remember walking in the locker room, and as soon as I'm walking in, I heard one of our scouts had gone and said something to like one of the players. And at that point in time, I really didn't understand like what was happening. But like literally that transaction was just taking place. And so that guy was getting cut to make room on the roster for me to be there. And I've never forgotten that sentence. And that's why I always tell I tell players and like young kids this all the time, because, you know, football doesn't last for everyone, but it's a great game that teaches you a lot about life. And so regardless of what level, you know, it ends for you, just take your playbook with you. So try to create like a positive spin on something that's pretty negative.
I had a couple of things here. Before I talk about what's going on with the College Football Playoff Committee and the possibility of forfeitures in the national playoffs, how about this? The team that should stick with its quarterback, Miami, Indy, Philly, the Niners, Washington.
What, for next year? I mean, what's the context of the question?
Yeah. Like you're set at the position.
Honestly, I feel like all of them with the exception of Washington. And Washington's like the interesting one to me where I think you go back before the season, and I'm still kind of questioning, like, so what was the plan? Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to be the guy, and that was just how it was going to go. And, yeah, maybe they battle for the NFC East, maybe not. But I just given his age and what's their ceiling if that's the decision you're making. You know, so I never really understood that whole plan to begin with. And so that's the one thing, like one team assuredly that I can tell you is going to be looking for a quarterback in the offseason. The rest of them, I think they've all got young guys who I think you need to give more time to.
Yeah, but you got to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo.
You know, I look at that situation, though, just from the small windows we had to see Trey Lance, and he's not ready. And Garoppolo still has a year left on his deal. Now, granted, they can release him, and I think the dead cap's like 1.4 or something like that. But that might be a scenario where, and I'm not trying to compare Jimmy Garoppolo to Aaron Rodgers, but, you know, we saw Jordan Love initially, like, all right, he needs a little more work too. He needs some more development too. Trey Lance is in a similar boat. And as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, he plays a winning style of football. You know, you can't take that away from him. He's accurate. He doesn't really turn over the football too much. He's not going to buy time and create a bunch of plays and all that, but he's able to help, you know, this team win football games. And so I don't see a reason to move on from him so fast, especially considering some of the bad years that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have experienced. Like, do you really want to go through those growing pains again with a younger quarterback just because where you drafted him?
Well, I look at Philly, and I like Jalen Hurts. I just think they have to decide if they're going to build around him. Indy, they can't get out from underneath Carson Wentz's contract right now. Miami, I'd have second thoughts about making that trade for Deshaun Watson because you can use those draft picks and make yourself a better team. And I think Tua has played well enough to maybe hold on to that. The Niners, eventually they have to move on with Garoppolo and Trey Lance in the on-deck circle, and Washington certainly. So Philly might be the one team that I would say out of all of them, like it feels like they're a little more set than anybody else.
I feel like every single one of those situations with their quarterback, though, is unique. Like, one of the things I'll say about Jalen Hurts from following him from Alabama to Oklahoma and then to the NFL is that young man's gotten better and better and better the more he's played. And I really thought he took a jump from the frustrations that we would hear from Nick Saban in the spring game when he's mic'd up, about, throwing the football, not playing more from the pocket, to then doing that at Oklahoma to a degree, and then continuing to get better at that at the NFL level. I just think he's the type of kid that the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And I think he likes challenges. I think he likes, the way Nick Sirianni and him, the rapport they have. And so he's the type of guy that even if you do build out around him and you find out 2 years from now, like, what his ceiling is, it's just not for you, you're still going to have that team set up, though, for whoever the next guy is going to be to have success. Then you look at Miami. The way Tua Tagovailoa was handled last year and this year, I just don't know how you can sit there and look at it and say, like, you've really gotten a clear picture of, what he's capable of being, because you kept jerking him in and out.
Yeah.
And it never made any sense to me last year. Yeah. And the offensive line that they've rebuilt is finally starting to mesh a little bit better. But, by and large part, they haven't had much of a consistent running game. And so, his accuracy is obviously one of the best in the league. He's been able to make some plays. I know people talk about him not having the strongest arm, but he can still make all the throws. So I'm kind of more of a believer, too, in just seeing what he is, at least next year, unless you really do feel like you can get a better quarterback via a trade, and whether that's Deshaun Watson or anyone else. But obviously with Deshaun Watson, there's a lot of potential baggage that could come along with that. And that's obviously the risk, I think, for any team that's looking to say, all right, can we get better than this, or should we continue to build it with what we have?
4 rookies made the Pro Bowl. If we redrafted, what order would they go in? Micah Parsons, Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Rashawn Slater.
I mean, are we putting a premium on the position? Because,
yeah,
I mean, the thing about Micah Parsons, as good as he's been this year, is like Dallas lucked into that position, right, due to the injuries and all that. So if you could redraft it, he's probably going first overall.
Yeah,
with the way he played. Now, I mean, maybe that sounds like maybe that sounds like controversial to a degree, but the reality is you could put him up for Defensive Player of the Year and he might win it. And I don't know if there's been any player that's impacted a team or at least a side of the football more so than Micah Parsons this year. So I think he would be the first one you take off the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Rashawn Slater doesn't get enough credit because he's a tackle.
Yeah.
We don't look at what he does and we say, oh, like this guy has been playing at a high level. He's been as good as probably most tackles in the league this year as a rookie. So I'd probably say second, and especially when you've got a guy like Herbert he's protecting. Chase would probably be third. I think he's been everything that was advertised, and who's the fourth?
Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is as good as Pitts has been at the tight end position, that team's just got so many issues, so many holes, and it's going to be hard for him to turn things around. But to me, between Chase and Pitts, I think Chase has had the bigger impact as far as the two pass catchers.
Talking to Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame quarterback, NFL quarterback, and, of course, works for Fox Sports. I'm trying to figure out this college football playoff policy that was written this week, why they're putting it out now, kind of boxes them in. But, they're talking about if one of the 4 semifinalists is unable to participate because of a COVID outbreak, the unavailable team will forfeit. Its opponent will advance to the national championship. If both teams are unavailable to play in a semifinal game, it would be declared a no contest. Then the winner of the other semifinal game would be declared the national champion. The national title game is January 10th, and it can be pushed back to no later than January 14th. Are they trying to scare these teams, these players? Like, what? Give me the logic behind this.
I don't know. I don't know if there's much logic to it. I mean, I think maybe Cincinnati's somewhere hoping and praying that everyone gets COVID and they be able to be declared the champion, right? I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me in this whole thing. But the reality is I don't know why they just can't reschedule or push it back. I get their semifinal bowl games. There's a lot that goes into the preparation for these. It's not like, your typical regular season game. There's a lot more that goes into it, the hotels and the people flying in and everything, how it's booked. Like, I understand all of that, but there has to be some degree of, this is for a national championship. We'd like this thing to play itself out. And I also wonder, like, what that burden is where a team decides it's going to declare it's going to have to forfeit because of COVID cases. This isn't the NFL. You have more than 46 active players that can play in a game, right? You've got, 85 scholarship players on most teams, whatever the case is, but 100 players in the team. You can field a team. It just may not be all your starters if that ends up being the case. So I'm not sure really what the point is outside of maybe motivating all the teams to get boosters. But even in that event, I don't know that provides them any additional protection like we see with the NFL, where if players are vaxxed, if they're asymptomatic, they're not going to get tested. It's only if they're tested. Yeah. If they were implementing a policy similar to that, then it would make sense for me to say, okay, some of these teams, I think Michigan's going to get they're all going to get boosters together as a team. Well, if they're incentivized to do so because look, as long as the kids are asymptomatic, they're going to let them play. That'd be one thing. But to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't been the statement that they've made. So I'm not sure if they just feel like because of all the news coming out with this particular variant that they're saying we need to get it out there what our plans are so people aren't shocked by it. Maybe that's part of it. But I just, I'll be really curious to see if these teams can kind of hold on or if Cincinnati somehow ends up not even have to play another game and winning a national championship, which would be pretty interesting to see that, the reaction to that.
Who's your pick to win it all?
Well, I think Bryce Young, which I've been kind of pounding the pavement for him all year. He's one of the best quarterback talents I've ever seen. And so it's hard to pick against Bama just for that reason.
Wait. Would you put Bryce in there with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and how?
As far as talent-wise, yes. The types of throws he can make and how he plays the game as a young player in college football is unbelievable. I said it before the year started. I told everyone back in the spring to take the betting advice he's going to win the Heisman. Here's the other one. He's going to be the first two-time Heisman winner. Now, the only thing that would stand in his way is an injury or if he just decides to bounce after next year. That's really it. Because I think he's talented enough to win two. I don't know if he'll be in college football long enough to do it. But he's that good of a player. And so it's hard to pick against Bama and their track record and all that for that reason. But my anticipation is you're going to see Georgia and Alabama play off again for the national championship, unless everyone gets COVID. And I think it's going to be hard to beat a team twice. And I think that's where you maybe see Georgia finally get over the hump and they end up winning the national championships when it's all said and done. But it's hard to bet against that kid. The way he moves around the pocket, the way he can create plays, utilize his legs, he's as accurate as you'll see. So I'm a huge Bryce Young fan, as I'm sure you can tell.
Brady, thanks as always. Merry Christmas to the family, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Yep, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy. That's Brady Quinn from Fox Sports. He co-hosts the radio show Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio.